Chloe adjusted the strap of her worn-out bag, hurrying down the rainy city streets. Her breath formed little clouds in the cold morning air. She'd been up since dawn, preparing deliveries for the day. Though her uniform was simple and her shoes slightly scuffed, she carried herself with pride. Each parcel she delivered meant food for her family and a little extra for her younger brother, who always waited eagerly for her return. But today was different. She had a high-profile delivery to a tall glass building downtown, a place she'd never been before. The address was Marcus Harrington Enterprises. Everyone in town whispered about Marcus Harrington, the millionaire known for his arrogance and sharp tongue. He ran his business with precision and expected perfection from everyone. Chloe took a deep breath as she walked into the sleek lobby. The marble floors reflected the bright sunlight streaming in through huge windows. She felt a twinge of nervousness as the receptionist eyed her plain delivery outfit. She smiled politely and handed over her ID. "Delivery for Marcus Harrington," she said in a firm voice. The receptionist gave a small smirk and pressed a button. Soon, a tall man in a sharp suit with a confident stride appeared. It was Marcus Harrington himself. His eyes scanned her from head to toe with a mix of amusement and judgment. "So, you're the delivery girl," he said with a sneer. "I hope you're capable, because this is not a simple package. It requires care, precision, and brains. If you're so smart, then translate this instruction and prove yourself." He held out a small device with several buttons and a complicated manual. Chloe felt a moment of panic, her heart racing, but she quickly steadied herself. Giving up was never an option. She took the device and nodded. "I will handle it, sir," she said, her voice calm, though her hands trembled slightly. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "We shall see," he replied, turning to leave but glancing back with a look of disbelief and challenge. Chloe set the device on a small counter and studied the manual. The instructions were complex and technical, far beyond anything she'd encountered before, but she wasn't one to back down. She read through each line carefully and started working, step by step, testing buttons, aligning parts, making sure every detail was perfect. Her mind raced, calculating outcomes and potential problems. She worked faster than she ever had before. Marcus watched from across the room, his arms crossed, a frown on his face. "Are you sure you know what you're doing?" he asked, stepping closer. Chloe looked up with determination in her eyes. "I always get the job done, sir," she replied confidently. Marcus shook his head, almost in disbelief. "You can't do this," he muttered under his breath. Chloe ignored him, focusing on the task. The tension in the room was thick, filled only by the sound of clicking buttons and small adjustments. After what felt like hours, but was only minutes, Chloe finally completed the setup. She pressed the final button. The device activated smoothly, lights blinking correctly, the screen displaying the proper sequence. Marcus froze, his eyes widened, and he stared at Chloe, unable to hide his shock. "How did you do that?" he asked, his voice almost a whisper. Chloe smiled softly, her hands still slightly shaking. "I read carefully and followed each step, sir," she said simply. Marcus took a step back, his usual arrogance faltering. He had expected failure, a clumsy mistake. Instead, he saw competence, intelligence, and courage, all wrapped in a young woman in a simple uniform. The moment hung between them, heavy with unspoken respect and something else he couldn't quite name. Chloe packed the device carefully into its box, ensuring it was safe and secure. When she handed it to Marcus, she looked up with a polite smile. "All done, sir." Marcus took the package, still staring at her with a mixture of amazement and something softer. He cleared his throat, trying to regain his composure. "Well, I must admit, you surprised me," he said, his voice betraying a hint of admiration. Chloe nodded and turned to leave. She paused at the door, feeling the weight of the encounter and the stirrings of a connection neither of them understood yet. As she stepped back out into the busy streets, she felt a surge of pride and excitement. The world seemed brighter. The challenge had been daunting, but she had proven herself. More importantly, she had proven to Marcus Harrington that appearances could be deceiving, that courage and cleverness weren't measured by wealth or status. In that small victory, Chloe walked a little taller, her heart beating faster, not just from the success, but from the thought that perhaps this meeting was the beginning of something unexpected, something powerful and emotional. As she made her way to her next delivery, she couldn't help but glance back at the towering building, imagining the man who had sneered at her, yet couldn't hide his astonishment. The city moved around her, people rushing, cars honking, but Chloe's mind kept drifting back to Marcus Harrington. The way he had looked at her, the hint of respect, the shadow of surprise, and perhaps a spark of curiosity. She had faced him with nothing but her skills and her confidence. And now he couldn't forget her, just as she couldn't forget the flutter in her chest that lingered when she remembered his intense gaze. She had come into that building as a delivery girl, but she walked out feeling like she had started a story much bigger than parcels or packages. A story filled with tension, courage, wit, and the quiet beginnings of something neither of them could predict. A story that would grow as they crossed paths again and again, As the sun began to set, casting long golden streaks over the city, Chloe paused to take a deep breath. She looked at the skyline and smiled to herself, knowing that today she had proven something far more important than her ability to handle a difficult delivery. She had proven that, even in the face of doubt and mockery, true skill and bravery could shine, and that perhaps, life had a way of bringing people together through unexpected challenges, through moments of tension, and through the quiet courage of a young delivery girl named Chloe. As she walked home, thinking of her small victories and the surprised look on Marcus Harrington's face, she felt a warmth in her heart, a promise of more encounters, more challenges, and perhaps the subtle stirrings of something that could one day become love. With that thought, Chloe continued on her way, her bag secure on her shoulder, her head held high, ready for whatever the next delivery might bring, ready to face any sneer or doubt with her calm determination, and ready to leave an impression that no one, not even a millionaire, could forget. Chloe's day started like any other, carrying parcels through the busy streets of the city. Her uniform was slightly damp from the morning drizzle, but her spirit was undeterred. Each delivery was a step closer to helping her family and proving her abilities. As she approached Marcus Harrington's office building once again, she felt a familiar mix of nerves and excitement. The memory of their last encounter was still fresh in her mind, the way he had sneered at her initially, and then paused in shock at her clever handling of his complicated device. It made her smile slightly, but she knew this visit would bring new challenges. As she walked through the lobby, the receptionist's eyes followed her with curiosity, as if expecting another dramatic scene. Chloe nodded politely and moved toward the elevator, pressing the button for Marcus Harrington's floor. She took a deep breath when the doors opened, revealing the sleek hallway and the shiny office doors. Marcus appeared almost immediately, with that same confident stride and sharp gaze that seemed to measure everything in the room. He looked at Chloe with a faint smirk and said, "Back again." His voice dripped with amusement and a hint of doubt. "I see you survived the last challenge." Chloe smiled politely. "I always do, sir," she replied, keeping her tone calm and steady, even though her heart beat faster at the sight of him. Marcus handed her a new package. This one was smaller, but with a list of instructions that seemed unnecessarily complicated, as if he wanted to test her patience and skill. "This one may seem easy," he said, stepping closer, "but I assure you, it is not. Just follow the steps exactly, or you will fail." Chloe studied the instructions carefully, noting each detail. Her eyes narrowed slightly in concentration, and she nodded. "I understand, sir," she said softly. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "We shall see if you truly understand," he said with a half smile, and turned to walk away, but paused, as if expecting her to falter. Chloe set the package down and immediately began organizing the steps. She tested each part, making sure everything aligned perfectly. She could feel Marcus watching her every move. His presence made her heart race, but also pushed her to focus harder. She adjusted tiny parts of the device, checked the readings on a small screen, and made subtle calculations that ensured the process would go smoothly. The room was quiet, except for the soft click of buttons and the occasional beep from the device. Marcus leaned against a nearby wall, observing her work with a mixture of skepticism and curiosity. He couldn't deny that she was impressing him, but he also felt a strange pull toward her determination, a pull he couldn't name. Chloe finished the setup and pressed the final button. The device activated flawlessly, lights blinking in sequence and the display showing perfect results. Marcus froze for a moment, his mouth slightly open in surprise. He had expected at least a small mistake, a stumble, a moment of incompetence. But Chloe had handled it all with grace and skill. She turned to him with a confident smile. "All done, sir," she said simply. Marcus shook his head in disbelief. "I cannot believe it," he muttered under his breath, his usual arrogance shaken by her capabilities. Chloe gathered the device carefully and handed it to him. He took it in his hands, still staring at her with a mixture of amazement and an emotion he didn't want to admit. His mind raced with thoughts he had not expected to have about a delivery girl. And yet, here she was before him, proving him wrong time and time again. The office staff watched the interaction quietly, noting the subtle change in Marcus's demeanor, the way his sharp gaze softened slightly, and how his posture seemed less rigid. Chloe noticed these small shifts too, but she focused on the task at hand, moving efficiently to organize her next deliveries. She could feel Marcus's eyes on her as she packed the next set of parcels, carefully ensuring nothing was damaged or misplaced. She walked toward him and handed over the list of completed deliveries. "Everything is ready, sir," she said, her voice steady even though a small smile tugged at her lips. Marcus accepted the list, his fingers brushing hers briefly, sending a small jolt of warmth through both of them. He cleared his throat and said, "You have a remarkable way of handling challenges, Chloe." The name he used sounded different from the sneer of before. It carried a subtle respect that made her pause slightly. She nodded politely and turned to leave, but Marcus stopped her. "Wait," he said, stepping closer. "There is another task." Chloe looked back cautiously, expecting another impossible challenge. He handed her a small envelope and said, "This must be delivered to my assistant across the city. It must arrive within the hour, and it cannot be opened until it reaches her. Do you think you can handle it?" Chloe nodded without hesitation. "I will, sir," she replied confidently. Marcus studied her for a moment longer, his eyes lingering on her face. A flicker of admiration, and perhaps something more, passed across his expression before he turned to leave. She took the envelope carefully and stepped out of the office, feeling the familiar thrill of a challenge. Her mind was already calculating the fastest route through the bustling streets and alleyways. She weaved through traffic with practiced skill, dodging pedestrians and vehicles while keeping the envelope secure. She thought of Marcus's reaction to her previous success and smiled to herself, imagining the surprise on his face when she delivered this one flawlessly. She arrived at the destination and handed the envelope to the assistant, who thanked her profusely. Chloe felt a quiet satisfaction as she watched the assistant open it and confirm that everything was correct. She turned to leave when she heard a voice behind her. "Chloe." She froze and looked up to see Marcus standing there, his coat slightly wet from the rain and his expression unreadable. He took a step closer and said softly, "You handled that perfectly." Chloe felt her cheeks warm at his words. "Thank you, sir," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Marcus smiled faintly and said, "I have to admit, I didn't expect this from a delivery girl." Chloe met his gaze steadily. "Appearances can be deceiving, sir," she replied with a small smile. Marcus chuckled softly, a sound that was rare and genuine, and for a moment, they simply looked at each other, the world around them fading as the city bustled on. Marcus cleared his throat and said, "I will have another challenge for you tomorrow." Chloe nodded. "I will be ready, sir," she said, her voice firm with confidence. Marcus studied her for a moment longer, as if memorizing the determination in her eyes, and then turned to leave. Chloe watched him go, feeling a strange mix of excitement and nervousness. The thrill of proving herself and the subtle stirrings of curiosity and perhaps something more lingered in her chest. She walked back through the city streets, the rhythm of her footsteps matching the beat of her heart. She passed familiar shops and cafes, noting the people who hurried past, unaware of the connection that had just formed between her and Marcus Harrington. She thought of the way he had looked at her, the flicker of surprise, the hint of admiration, and the rare, soft chuckle that had escaped him. She smiled to herself, knowing that she had managed not only to complete a difficult delivery, but also to leave an impression on a man who thought he had seen everything. And yet, here he was, surprised, impressed, and perhaps subtly intrigued by Chloe's skill, courage, and spirit. As she continued her rounds that day, every delivery she made was accomplished with the same care and determination. Her mind drifted back occasionally to Marcus and the way he had said her name with that faint respect. The city grew darker as evening approached, the glow of streetlights reflecting on wet pavement, creating streaks of gold and silver. Chloe paused at a corner to catch her breath, her bag heavy but her heart light. She felt a quiet thrill knowing that tomorrow would bring another encounter, another challenge, and perhaps a deeper understanding between her and Marcus Harrington. As she made her way home through the narrowing streets and quieter neighborhoods, she felt a warmth in her chest, a promise of excitement, suspense, and perhaps the beginnings of something unexpected and emotional that neither she nor Marcus could yet name. She knew she had not only delivered parcels today, she had delivered a message that she was capable, brave, and clever, and that Marcus Harrington would not forget her anytime soon. With that thought, Chloe smiled softly, her steps quickening with renewed energy, ready for the adventures and challenges that awaited her, and the subtle growing tension and sparks between her and Marcus that would surely lead to moments of surprise, joy, and perhaps love. As she reached the familiar doorway of her home, Chloe paused to look back toward the city skyline, imagining Marcus in his office, perhaps thinking of her with that same mix of confusion, admiration, and curiosity that she felt in return. And with that, she stepped inside, ready to rest, recharge, and prepare for whatever tomorrow would bring, confident that no matter the challenge, she would always rise to it. And perhaps, along the way, teach a millionaire that a delivery girl could never be underestimated. The morning sun broke through the clouds, casting a golden glow over the city as Chloe adjusted the strap of her bag and stepped out into the familiar chaos of the streets. Excitement and nervousness mingled within her. Today's deliveries were routine, but nothing in her life felt routine since she met Marcus Harrington. The memory of his sharp gaze and that faint hint of respect still lingered in her mind. Just yesterday, he'd watched her complete every challenge flawlessly. He'd even smiled, just once, a rare expression that sent a flutter through her chest. Shaking her head lightly, she tried to focus on the parcels in her bag. The city buzzed around her, honking cars, rushing pedestrians, the smell of fresh coffee from corner cafes. Chloe weaved through the crowd, her deliveries secure, her mind alert. She arrived at the towering glass building of Marcus Harrington Enterprises and took a deep breath. The receptionist gave her a polite nod, signaling Marcus that she was here. As always, Chloe smiled and walked toward the elevators, her heart beating a little faster, wondering what challenge awaited her today. When the doors opened, she saw him standing at the end of the hall, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. He looked at her with a mix of curiosity and expectation. "Chloe," he said in his usual sharp tone, "I have a situation that requires your attention." She nodded immediately. "I will do my best, sir." He handed her a file and a small device. "This is urgent," he said, his voice low and serious. "There is a problem in the company that no one else can solve. Everyone is panicking, and I need someone who can think quickly and carefully." Chloe's eyes widened slightly, but she nodded firmly. "I will help, sir." Marcus studied her for a moment, his eyes testing her determination, then turned toward his office, leaving Chloe to follow. She felt the weight of the package and file, but more importantly, she felt the weight of his trust. She would not disappoint him. Inside the office, the atmosphere was thick with stress. The team was gathered around computers, phones were ringing off the hook, and papers were scattered everywhere. Marcus gestured toward a complicated network issue that had halted a major project. "No one understands what is happening," he said, frustrated. "I need you to figure it out before this ruins everything." Chloe took a deep breath and walked to the computer. Her fingers flew over the keyboard, entering commands, analyzing patterns, and testing solutions. She moved with a quiet confidence, even as the pressure mounted. She could feel Marcus behind her, observing her every move. His arms crossed. His expression softened slightly as he noticed how focused and capable she was, despite the chaos. The office staff watched in quiet amazement as the delivery girl worked tirelessly while everyone else panicked. She traced through lines of code, checked connections, and slowly began to piece together a solution. The hours passed quickly. Occasionally, Marcus would offer a small suggestion, but mostly he just watched, sometimes muttering in surprise at her cleverness. Finally, she made the final adjustments, pressed the enter key, and the system responded immediately. The stalled project was back online, data flowing smoothly. The entire office let out a collective sigh of relief. Marcus stepped forward, his composed expression cracking slightly in amazement. "How did you do that?" he asked quietly. Chloe turned to him, wiping a small bead of sweat from her forehead. "I studied the problem carefully and followed each step methodically, sir," she replied simply. Marcus shook his head, almost in disbelief. "I never imagined a delivery girl could handle something so complex," he said softly, his tone carrying a new hint of admiration. Chloe felt her cheeks warm at the compliment. "I always try my best, sir." Marcus glanced around the office, seeing the relief on his staff's faces, then looked back at Chloe. He couldn't deny the pride he felt for her intelligence and dedication. But more than that, he felt a strange emotion he couldn't name, a flutter in his own chest whenever she smiled or focused on her task. It was new and confusing. Chloe packed her things, expecting nothing more than a polite nod, but he stepped closer. "You have a remarkable mind, Chloe," he said softly. Her heart skipped a beat. "Thank you, sir," she whispered. He continued, "I have seen many people come and go in this office, but you are different. You have courage, intelligence, and a calm that I have rarely seen." Chloe smiled softly, looking down for a moment, feeling that strange flutter again. Her feelings for Marcus were growing, even though she tried to push them away. She had never met a man like him, confident, arrogant, but also capable of surprise and maybe even kindness. She looked back up at him and saw a flicker of something in his eyes, a softness that made her wonder if he felt more than just admiration. "I am glad I could help, sir," she said. For a moment, they simply looked at each other, the tension between them heavy with unspoken words. The office seemed to fade away, replaced by a strange quiet that existed only between them. Marcus cleared his throat and handed her another small device. "There is one more task," he said. "It is delicate and must be handled with care. Can I trust you, Chloe?" She nodded immediately. "You can, sir." He studied her for a moment longer, his eyes softening slightly before he smiled faintly. "Very well then." Chloe followed him out of the office. She thought of the challenges she had faced today, the panic, the chaos, the complex problem, and the quiet thrill of knowing she had proven herself once again, perhaps even earning a place in Marcus's respect. As they reached the lobby, Marcus spoke softly. "Chloe, you have exceeded all expectations today." She looked up at him and smiled. "Thank you, sir." He paused, studying her closely. "There is something about you that I cannot quite explain. Something that draws my attention and makes me think of you even when I am busy." Chloe felt a small flutter in her heart. "I am just doing my job, sir," she said softly. Marcus shook his head slightly. "No, Chloe, you are more than just doing your job. You are remarkable, and I am surprised by my own feelings." Her heart skipped a beat. For a moment, they just looked at each other, the world around them distant and irrelevant. All that mattered was the strange connection building between them. She realized that perhaps Marcus Harrington wasn't just a rich, arrogant businessman. He was a man capable of being surprised, impressed, and maybe even touched by someone like her. Chloe turned her attention back to the device she was holding, checking the final instructions. "It is ready, sir," she said softly. Marcus took the device from her, their hands brushing for a moment. The brief contact sent a spark that neither of them could ignore. A warmth Chloe couldn't explain, a pull Marcus couldn't resist. Chloe packed her things and turned to leave when Marcus said, "Tomorrow will bring new challenges. Chloe and I expect you to be ready." She nodded. "I will be, sir." Stepping out into the bustling city, the streets seemed alive with possibility. Her mind replayed the events of the Datha chaos she had solved. Marcus's admiration, the flutter in her chest, and the strange pull she felt toward him. Her life was changing in ways she couldn't yet understand. She hadn't just delivered parcels today, she had delivered intelligence, courage, and a spark of something new into Marcus Harrington's world, and perhaps into her own heart. As the sun dipped lower, casting long golden shadows, Chloe felt a mixture of pride and anticipation. She knew that tomorrow would bring more challenges, more tests, and more encounters with Marcus. And with each interaction, they would be pulled closer, whether they were ready or not. A story of courage, skill, and perhaps the quiet beginnings of love that neither of them had expected. The morning air was crisp as Chloe stepped out of her small apartment, the city streets slowly waking around her. She adjusted the strap of her bag and thought about the day ahead. Her deliveries seemed ordinary compared to the challenges she had faced recently. But deep down, she knew that each encounter with Marcus Harrington was never ordinary. As she approached the familiar glass building that housed his office, her heart beat a little faster, thinking of the way he had looked at her, that mix of surprise, admiration, and something she couldn't quite name. Marcus appeared in the lobby as usual, his coat neat, his posture perfect, his gaze scanning the area until it landed on Chloe. "Good morning, Chloe," he said in his usual controlled tone, with a faint smile. "I hope you are ready for today." She nodded politely. "Yes, sir," she replied, keeping her voice calm, though her stomach fluttered at the sound of his voice. He handed her a folder and a small device. "There is a task that needs immediate attention," he said. "It is delicate and requires precision and intelligence. I trust you to handle it." Chloe took the items carefully, her fingers brushing his briefly, sending a small spark through her that she quickly tried to ignore. She followed him to the office, where a few staff members were gathered around computers and papers strewn across desks. The atmosphere was tense, but less chaotic than before. Marcus gestured toward the device and folder. "This involves coordinating several departments and ensuring nothing goes wrong. The stakes are high, and the timeline is short." Chloe nodded. "I understand, sir," she said, her voice steady and determined. She began organizing her plan, testing each step carefully, and explaining quietly to Marcus what she intended to do. He listened closely, his eyes narrowing slightly as he followed her logic and strategy. The tension in the room was high, but Chloe's calm presence seemed to ease it gradually. The staff watched, amazed, as a simple delivery girl handled a complex situation with precision, confidence, and composure. Marcus leaned against the wall, observing her silently, his usual arrogance replaced by a fascination he couldn't name. The way she moved through the tasks so efficiently, and the way her mind worked under pressure, made him feel both respect and a strange admiration that he couldn't shake. As Chloe completed the first phase of the task, she looked up at Marcus, who nodded approvingly and said softly, "You truly have a gift, Chloe." Her heart fluttered at the praise. "Thank you, sir," she whispered. Marcus hesitated for a moment, then spoke more personally. "I have watched you grow in these past days, handling challenges I never imagined you could manage, and I find myself impressed, not just by your skills, but by your courage, determination, and intelligence." Chloe paused, a small warmth spreading in her chest. "I am just doing my best, sir," she replied softly. Marcus shook his head slightly. "No, Chloe, you are more than just doing your best. You are extraordinary, and I cannot help but notice how remarkable you are." Chloe's fingers tightened around the folder as she realized the weight of his words. They were no longer just instructions or praise. They carried something more, something personal that made her heart race and her thoughts tangle. Marcus cleared his throat and handed her another document. "There is one more thing I need you to handle today, a situation outside the office. It requires discretion and care. I trust you completely." She nodded immediately. "I will do my best, sir," she said, her voice steady, though her heart pounded as she followed him to a waiting car. He opened the door for her, and she stepped in, feeling a strange mix of excitement and nervousness. As they drove through the city streets, the silence in the car was heavy but comfortable, filled with anticipation and unspoken thoughts. Chloe reviewed the instructions quietly, while Marcus occasionally glanced at her out of the corner of his eye, noting her concentration, her determination, and the subtle way her eyes lit up when she solved a problem. The car finally stopped at a location she had never been before, a small community center where Marcus's project required careful handling of resources. She stepped out and approached the staff waiting for her instructions. She coordinated the delivery of materials and ensured that everyone understood their roles, checking details and confirming outcomes. Marcus observed silently from a distance, feeling an unexpected pride and admiration for Chloe. He had expected competence and skill, but not the genuine care and patience she displayed toward others. Her kindness, intelligence, and courage impressed him more than he could have imagined, and he found himself thinking of her in ways he had not anticipated. Chloe completed the task flawlessly and turned to Marcus with a small smile. "Everything is done, sir," she said softly. He stepped closer, and for a moment, they simply looked at each other, the city around them fading as the intensity of the moment took over. Marcus took a deep breath and spoke, his voice low and earnest. "Chloe, I have been meaning to say this for some time now. You are not like anyone I have ever met. Your courage, intelligence, and spirit have left a mark on me, and I care for you more than I expected." Chloe's heart skipped a beat, and she felt warmth spread across her chest. "Sir," she began, but hesitated, unsure how to respond. Marcus smiled faintly, seeing the hesitation, and gently said, "You do not need to answer now. I only wanted you to know how I feel, and that my feelings are sincere." Chloe looked down for a moment, processing the words, the sincerity in his voice, the intensity of his gaze, and the flutter in her chest that told her she felt something similar. She looked up and met his eyes. "I care for you too, Marcus," she whispered softly, the use of his name bringing a blush to her cheeks. Marcus's expression softened, and for the first time, Chloe saw a side of him that was not controlled or arrogant, a side that was touched by connection and emotion, a rare vulnerability. She smiled faintly, realizing that despite their differences and the challenges of their worlds, there was a genuine bond forming between them. Marcus took a small step closer. "Chloe, I know our lives are different, and I know there will be challenges. But I want to face them with you." Chloe nodded, feeling a rush of warmth and happiness. "I want that too, Marcus," she said softly. The tension of previous days melted into relief, excitement, and anticipation of what was to come. They returned to the office together with a renewed sense of purpose, Marcus introducing Chloe to the staff with pride, and Chloe feeling a quiet thrill at the acknowledgement of her worth and the budding connection between them. The rest of the day passed in a blur of deliveries and small tasks, but the energy between them had changed. Every glance, every smile, carried unspoken meaning. Chloe left the building that evening, her steps light, her heart full of emotion and anticipation for the days ahead. She thought of Marcus's words and the subtle shift in his demeanor, the spark in his eyes, the softening of his voice, and the rare vulnerability she had witnessed. She realized that their story was unfolding rapidly, filled with suspense, challenges, and deepening feelings that neither of them could ignore. As she walked through the streets, the golden glow of streetlights reflecting on the wet pavement, Chloe felt a sense of hope, excitement, and nervous anticipation, knowing that their connection was real and that each new encounter would bring them closer together. The future was uncertain, but the promise of a bond forming between a remarkable delivery girl and a confident, wealthy man filled her with warmth. As she reached her small apartment, she paused to look out at the city skyline, imagining Marcus in his office, thinking of her as she had thought of him. She smiled softly, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new moments, and new opportunities for them to grow closer. The confession had been made, the feelings shared, and the story of Chloe and Marcus Harrington was entering a new, exciting chapter, full of suspense, emotion, and the delicate beginnings of love. The morning sun shone brightly over the city as Chloe stepped out of her apartment, her delivery bag slung over her shoulder. She felt a quiet excitement mixed with nervous anticipation. Today wasn't just another delivery day, it was another chance to face challenges and maybe, just maybe, grow closer to Marcus Harrington. She walked quickly through the bustling streets, weaving through pedestrians and honking cars, keeping her bag secure. Her mind drifted to the previous days. The memory of Marcus's confession, the subtle tension, and the growing feelings between them filled her heart with a warm flutter. Shaking her head lightly, she tried to focus on her tasks, but she couldn't completely ignore the thoughts of him. She soon arrived at the tall glass building that housed Marcus Harrington Enterprises. Taking a deep breath, she stepped into the familiar lobby. The receptionist gave her a polite nod, as if expecting another one of their dramatic encounters. Chloe smiled softly and headed for the elevators, pressing the button for Marcus's floor. Her heart beat faster with each ascending level, and she wondered what today would bring. When the elevator doors opened, Marcus was already waiting at the end of the hallway. His posture was confident, his expression sharp, yet it softened with that faint smile that always appeared when he saw her. "Good morning, Chloe," he said in his usual controlled tone. "I have a task for you today, but also something else we need to discuss." She nodded politely. "I'm ready, sir," she replied, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. Marcus handed her a small folder and a delicate device. This is important and delicate, he said. I trust you to handle it perfectly. Chloe accepted the items and followed him into the main office. A few staff members were already working, the atmosphere tense with ongoing projects, but her focus remained on the task at hand. She quickly organized her plan, following each step methodically and checking every detail. Marcus watched silently from a distance, his eyes following her every move, with a mixture of admiration, fascination, and something deeper he hadn't expected to feel. Chloe worked tirelessly, coordinating with different departments, checking equipment, confirming details, and testing results. Her calm presence seemed to ease the tension in the room. The staff observed her, amazed at the competence and intelligence of a delivery girl who handled such responsibility with so much grace. Marcus couldn't take his eyes off her. The way she moved through the tasks so efficiently, the focus in her eyes, the subtle confidence in her posture. It all stirred something unfamiliar within him, a strange pull and a growing warmth. He tried to maintain his composure, but he realized he was falling further for her courage, her determination, and her cleverness. As Chloe completed the main task, she turned to him with a small smile. "Everything is done, sir," she said softly. Marcus stepped closer, and for a moment, they simply looked at each other. The tension between them was thick, yet comforting. He reached out gently and brushed a strand of hair from her face. Chloe felt a shiver run down her spine, and her cheeks warmed. "Chloe," he said quietly, "I can't hide my feelings anymore. I admire you more than I can express. I respect your skills and your courage, and I love you." Chloe's heart skipped a beat. The words she had both hoped for and feared filled her with warmth. She felt tears prick at her eyes, but she smiled softly. "Marcus, I love you too," she whispered. Hearing his first name on her lips sent a thrill through them both. Marcus's usual confident and sharp demeanor melted slightly as he reached for her hand. "I never expected to feel this way," he said honestly. "But you've changed everything for me." Chloe squeezed his hand gently. "And you've changed my world too, sir," she said, a smile spreading across her face. They stood together in the quiet office, a rare moment of peace and connection in the midst of the busy day. Marcus guided Chloe to a private corner where they could talk freely. He looked into her eyes. "I know our worlds are different," he said, "but I want to face whatever comes, together, with you." Chloe nodded. "I want that too, Marcus," she said softly, the connection between them deepening with every word and glance. The staff worked quietly around them, respecting the moment, yet sensing the shift in the dynamic between their boss and the delivery girl. Chloe completed her remaining tasks for the day, with Marcus watching closely. He provided guidance and support, but also showed his care in small ways, like offering her coffee or helping with her bag. Each gesture made her heart flutter. She noticed how he looked at her when she solved a problem or handled a tricky situation, and she realized the admiration in his eyes had turned into pure love. As the day progressed, they faced a minor misunderstanding, a mix-up with a delivery that could have caused tension. Instead, it became an opportunity for honesty. Chloe explained the situation calmly and clearly, and Marcus listened attentively, apologizing for any confusion. The situation resolved peacefully, with a shared laugh that lightened the atmosphere. Afterward, Marcus pulled her aside. "I'm proud of you, Chloe, and I want the world to know how remarkable you are," he said softly. "You're brave, clever, and kind, and I'm lucky to have you in my life." Chloe felt a rush of happiness, her heart swelling with emotion. "Thank you, Marcus," she whispered. "I'm lucky too." He smiled faintly, taking her hand and guiding her toward the window that overlooked the city skyline. "We have a lot ahead of us," he said. "Challenges will come, but I promise to be by your side." Chloe nodded, her eyes shining. "And I'll be by yours, sir." Together, they watched the sun begin to set. The city bathed in a golden light. It was a perfect moment of peace. Their hands intertwined, their hearts aligned. They walked together to the lobby, where Marcus greeted the staff, proudly introducing Chloe as someone important in his life, someone whose courage and skill he deeply respected. Chloe felt a quiet thrill as everyone acknowledged her. The rest of the evening passed with a gentle rhythm of laughter and conversation. Small moments of teasing glances and subtle touches strengthened the bond between them. As they left the building, Marcus opened the door for Chloe, and they stepped out into the cool night air. The city was alive with lights and movement. She looked up at him, smiling softly. "Thank you for today," she said, "and for everything." Marcus smiled back. "You deserve it, Chloe." And so much more. They walked side by side, their steps in sync, their hearts beating with excitement and love. The night air carried the promise of a future together. When they reached a quiet park, Marcus stopped and turned to her. "I know life won't always be easy," he said gently, "but I want to face every day with you by my side." Chloe looked into his eyes, a tear of happiness rolling down her cheek. "I want that too, Marcus." He pulled her gently into a hug, holding her close as the city lights twinkled around them. For the first time, Marcus allowed himself to be vulnerable, and Chloe felt the depth of his feelings, allowing herself to feel them fully in return. They pulled back slightly, and Marcus brushed a gentle kiss across her forehead. "You have my heart, Chloe," he whispered. "And you have mine, Marcus," she replied softly. Their lips met in a tender kiss, sealing the promises and feelings they had both held close for days. The connection between them was deep and genuine, a love that had grown through challenges, courage, and shared moments of triumph. As they walked home together, hand in hand, they felt the thrill of a new beginning, the comfort of understanding, and the excitement of a love that neither had expected. Chloe knew she had won not just respect, but a partner who saw her for who she truly was. And Marcus knew that Chloe had changed his world in ways he could never have imagined. When they reached her apartment, they paused, looking at each other with soft smiles, their hearts full of hope and joy. They knew the journey ahead would be filled with challenges, but together, they could face anything. As Chloe stepped inside, Marcus lingered for a moment, looking up at the skyline. He smiled, knowing their love story had just begun. No matter the obstacles, they would face them side by side. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed Chloe and Marcus's story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more. We'll see you in the next one.